state what we took action on.
This is what it says. Motion Anderson, second Sather, to approve the potential action of the matter based on the discussion in the closed session. And then it just doesn't say, you know.
What it was.
Yeah.
And I do think we had direction from our attorney on what to say when we came back into the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Agenda item 8. Approve minutes from the special meeting on May 28th.
So move.
I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Any discussion on the approval of minutes from the meeting on May 28th? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item 9 is new business, and the first agenda item is the elementary school design update from Cunningham.
So this is Scott Cronin with Cunningham, sharing my screen. And is the agenda and then
I don't know if it's just my audio, but it sounded like you were cutting out a little bit. Can you repeat that?
Fine.
I'll try again. Sorry, this is Scott with Cunningham. So I'll share my screen, which will be sharing the elementary as well as followed by the high school or secondary school design as well. I'm assuming we'll just carry through into that. Go ahead and start. Everyone see my screen?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So we think this is essentially the last or major design presentation to the board. Last Thursday, we presented our last major significant presentation to the advisory for the secondary schools. And we know that shovels are ready to start digging on the elementary. This Friday, we'll be putting together and delivering the bid package for the secondary school. So we're really ending the design process and construction process. So what we're preparing to build is a reflection of all the work that's occurred over the last year and a half or so. Work with your school district, staff, administrators, teachers, students, as well as community members that all had a voice in what we're preparing for. And the charge at the very beginning was really about doing something that hasn't been done before. And so this vision that was created as part of that pre-referendum work has been sort of our lens as we look to design the elementary school as well as the high school. Design statement that was created very early in the process, and sorry, let me minimize this stuff so it doesn't interfere. It really was just about creating a campus of schools in its place and surroundings, a new setting for education in the range. Speaking about connecting to nature and color pattern and textures that are reflected in the schools, as well as a new narrative for education that has really been supported by this transformational vision that you saw in the previous slide. Start with just the overall site campus, and we'll move directly into the campus of the elementary school. We think of this as one campus, this collection of two schools, and the way we cited building and other site programs and deployed them throughout these adjacent properties was a result of creating the opportunities between what this offered and placing all these programs in one location, as well as really respectfulness and responsibility to what the land had to offer us. Starting at the northwest corner of the site, a collection of ball fields with supporting JV baseball, JV softball, varsity baseball and varsity softball with a multi-purpose overlay at the varsity baseball field. All of these are currently designed as synthetic turf fields, so they have multiple or expanded opportunities for access during those shoulder seasons, as well as additional support spaces here, is not just parking, but storage and other amenities. This field, these collection of fields are really sited and nestled in a way that's really unlike any other sort of collection of ball fields and play fields that we've really worked on for high schools. Typically, we're given, a large 100-acre farmland or greenfield site that really creates a more condensed collection of site program, but this allowed us to really nestle us into the natural surroundings, which is a really amazing opportunity. Connecting the ball fields to the school is through this natural boardwalk or wetland boardwalk that crosses protected wetlands. And so the main secondary school to the western part of the Spectrum property, parking and drop off and buses all in between the secondary school and the UAS facility, utilizing one site in between the secondary property or the school proper and the elementary is the stadium. So it's positioned well to be accessed directly from the secondary school as well as the elementary. And then now sort of the end of the campus, the end of Progress Parkway, the southern part of the overall campus plan is the elementary. Over to Kristen, who's going to kind of talk us through some of the planning of the elementary.
Hey everyone, this is Kristen Nelson with Cunningham Group. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to, now that you've been reacquainted with the lay of the land on the campus side of things, we'll zoom in on the elementary site plan. And as you can see everyone can see the building shape there. It says elementary in all caps. That's what Scott's pointing to right now. Up at the top of the site plan, you can see where the road leads into the site, and we've got two loops there. And so the first loop is what we're calling the drop-off loop. And so that would have actually about 10 parking spaces. You're seeing a bit more here. And the goal here is to allow parents to drop off along the curb or park for 5 minutes and walk the child in. So that's for quick traffic in and out of the site. And then coming further down that path, the south parking lot is for staff. And then that larger loop surrounding that is for bus drop off and pickup. And then at the very south end of the site, you can see where there is a gate allowing only emergency vehicles through that point. So, you can see the main entry leading up to the building there. It's kind of connected by a series of sidewalks from each of the drop-off and parking areas. And as soon as you come to that point, it's got a lot of what you're seeing here of natural rock, and the goal is to preserve some of the natural rock on the site and use some of the rock from the site in the landscaping. And I think that'll be that's been an important feature to preserve and make part of the design. And as soon as you pass into the building, we'll look at the floor plan in a minute, you enter into the main big heart common space, and that connects you out to the courtyard space, which Scott's pointing at right now. And that's obviously between the learning wings, and it's got a lot of opportunity for outdoor learning, small group, big group. Teachers can bring classrooms of students out there. Also, surrounding the building, that north leg coming out of the building is the gym. And that's also where the door would lead out to recess. So there's a hardscape area and a playground area with a play yard to accommodate some T-ball activities or informal play. And then there's also a sensory garden to the left of that for even, again, more informal play and kind of tactile learning. So I think, Scott, if you want to bring us inside, you'll start to see some of the spaces I was just talking about. That's that main entry right there. It's a safe and secure vestibule with visibility to who's coming into the school and who's given access. And that's the main heart, what we call the heart or the common space. And it's a pretty exciting space. Dining occurs there. We also are, in a moment, are going to look at an image. You see the word play there, but it's a lot more dynamic than just the word play. So that there's actually being planned an indoor playground in that space, and that then leads out to that courtyard. Quick access from the heart, common space to a community room, and then up to the gym. And then you can see the two learning neighborhoods clearly here. The South Learning Wing is pre-K, K, and then the North Learning Wing would be 1st and 2nd grade, and then 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th upstairs. And so those grade levels above kindergarten each have a neighborhood commons, which you can see labeled there. And that's really, it hosts media, it hosts some furniture that's mobile that allows for flexibility throughout the day and different types of learning. So access to those media opportunities there. And then upstairs on level 2, again, we have a repeat of the learning wings. And then much of the space in the center is open to the heart below, and we're going to see how that indoor playground really connects the two. There's also a technology space and a music classroom up here. So that's the broad overview of how the elementary school is laid out, and we've got some images to share with you too.
And so I think you probably have seen some of these images before, and they've sort of lasted through earlier part of the design, but this view from that drop-off area to the west of the school, looking at the main entry, a building form that's represents and connects to landscape. So you have these sloping forms, as well as kind of a familiar form to the young students that are attending there. A clearly defined entry that's supported by this welcoming canopy that brings the scale of the building down to the students. So this idea of this entry canopy that has some wood to it as well to create that warmth and brings the scale of the school down to the students. This entry then, as Kristen talked about, leads to the heart of the school, and the heart of the school becomes this main welcoming heart that has, as you can see, a playful attitude to it, just right for an elementary. So the building is supported by a lot of wood to create that warmth, a lot of area to create and allow for active play within the school. And so we're looking at this play structure that connects the main floor to the upper level bridge that connects the two learning neighborhoods. And this idea always of, particularly at the common spaces, the heart spaces to both these schools, of having connection to the landscape. So you see from entry, you see through the building to the commons, from the commons you see through to the learning landscape, courtyard space in between the neighborhoods beyond the east.
And Scott, I know we've got a couple more images. I just wanted to add on the indoor playground, that piece, we're really hopeful that it is part of the bid construction, or it's built as part of the construction package. We're hopeful that bids come in favorably to allow for that to happen. There's a chance it could be a great fundraising opportunity. So we'll know more about that soon. And you can move on to the next one.
Yeah, and so this from the main heart space, we're talking about two learning neighborhoods that have sort of a learning common space that becomes a focal point for each of those learning neighborhoods. And with the focal point of being really infused with media of books and digital media. But this idea that students are always sort of surrounded by books was a really interesting direction that we were given as part of this process, and making it equally an easy access for students to be able to reach out and grab a book. It's also centered through all the learning studios, so there's visibility that allows that much more of a extension of the classroom space. And again, views are and access to daylight are really important. And finally, just emerging on the outdoor learning courtyard space in between these learning neighborhoods is this space that really is representation and bringing that native landscape into the building and laying the building as this kind of our two arms sort of embracing the landscape. It's providing opportunities for more engaged play with the landscape, sort of more natural play, as well as Kristen talked about, is bringing learning beyond the footprint of the building to the inside and connecting to that landscape. So that's sort of the extent of the elementary. Would you like me to pause now for any questions or comments, or should we move right to the secondary school?
Do any of the board members have any questions or comments? I think you're safe to move on to the second part of your presentation.
So we'll move to the northern part of the campus, which is the secondary school. This is sort of a enlarged image of the Spectrum property. The siting of the building, the secondary school, was really a strong collaborative effort amongst the entire design team. I think we pointed to the fact that the site offered some challenges as well as opportunities. So placing the building nestled up against the sort of that protected wetland to the west, allowing the learning core to really be connected to that landscape, and then positioning, and you'll see once we move inside the building, but positioning more of those public spaces facing east for ease and accessibility from the parking and drop-off areas. There are essentially three significant landscape areas that we want to pay attention to, or we paid attention to. The main entry, which really is about creating and inviting opportunity and places for gathering outside of that, the main entry of the commons area. So that's this area here, directly related to the main drop-off area. And when we take a step back, and I forgot to mention how you circulate through the site, so you're entering from Progress Parkway. Main entry drive is here. Buses will come around at the very eastern edge, loop around, drop off and out. The rest of the staff and students will use this eastern edge and then filter into the parking. And then we have this drop off sort of bypass loop that allows parents to drop off along the west, along the main entry, and it sort of encompasses the visitor parking to the closest parking spaces to the main entry. Back to those landscape opportunities. So the main entry plaza then feeds into the commons area, a similar theme that you saw in the elementary. So this idea about entry experience starts at that drop off, continues through the commons, and then the landscape continues and carries through in between the two learning neighborhoods to this learning plaza that steps down with the landscape and is really about creating opportunity for the learning core to access that learning plaza. That's the more natural learning plaza with places for outdoor gathering, as well as some outdoor learning opportunities there. And then the third sort of major outdoor landscape element that we want to pay attention to or talk about is what we call the Crafton Build Plaza. That's really where works from the arts core as well as the CT sort of emerge from inside the school. So we have opportunities for some of those components that are being worked on, whether they're tiny houses or some sculpture take place that can start to emerge and come out of the building on Crafton Plaza. We'll take a very sort of high-level tour of the main building, and we've talked through it before, so I think essentially the main components are in the same place. There's just a lot more detail than probably the last time you talked about it or seen this presentation. Main entry plaza, again, coming from the east, directly into the main entry vestibule. Similar to the elementary, will connect to what we call the Welcome Center, which is the sort of the welcoming center to the administrative wing. So this is our clear, safe and secure entry point. And everything's sort of surrounded or focused on the main innovation commons is what we call it. It's a 3-story common space. Just to take a step back, the main level is actually level 2. As I mentioned before, this building steps down with the landscape. So the lower level is level 1, main level is level 2, and then the upper level is level 3. Main commons supported by a kitchen space to the south. So this is the main servery. They'll support the commons area for lunchtime. As I mentioned, the commons flows through and connects to the outdoor landscape to the west. Moving west, you have these learning neighborhoods. They're supported by essentially 6 learning studios, small group rooms, medium group rooms, teacher collaboration space, and informal learning space as sort of the key ingredients to each level learning neighborhood. So you have a south learning neighborhood, a north learning neighborhood. To the north, we have ProStar Kitchen. South is a culinary lab. And then overlooking the woods, CTE below, is the Career Center. And then rounding out sort of the northeast corner of the building is that more public space, the performing arts, the PE and athletic spaces for the competition pool, the support space for the pool, locker rooms, the main athletic commons, and then the main gymnasium here. So we're going to step down with the landscape. So step down to the lower level, or level 1, just directly below that previous level I've talked through. Again, we'll start in the middle. We're calling this sort of creative commons to the 3-story common space. Calling it creative commons because it's focused and its core is with the arts. So 3D art, 2D art, digital art are in the core of the creative commons. And bookending the creative commons are to the north, design lab and construction lab. So this idea about synergy between art and woods becomes an opportunity. To the south, bookending to the south, is the clean manufacturing lab. So this idea about connecting art with metal, welding and manufacturing, so metals, and then industrial maintenance in automotive. So this idea about the sort of the core of the lower level is supported by this arts as this creative commons as this core. And this core is connected out to the landscape. So the idea that you can walk directly out to the landscape. To the west, again, we have the first floor of those learning neighborhoods, south and north learning neighborhoods. And these are really a little bit different look at what the learning neighborhoods represented. Upstairs, you had more clearly defined classroom spaces with additional support space. This started to blur the lines. It was really about creating this foundational, sort of new narrative for what learning could be. And it was started to break down the classroom walls or the footprint of the classroom and create much more open, connected learning. We call it project-based learning neighborhoods. So there are support spaces for presentation for maker type spaces, as well as experimentation. And then the core, the center of it is supported by small group rooms. This idea about potentially a meeting type room and an additional support space that is in this core. But the idea is about much more open, collaborative learning environment on the lower level, supporting the same amount of students as the upper level learning neighborhoods. I talked through the south, and the construction lab to the north, immediately adjacent to the Performing Arts Center. The Performing Arts Center steps down, so you top load. So the stage is at the, so this idea about woods and the performing arts had the ability to create within the construction lab scenes for the performing arts and just move them directly across the hall to the stage. And then directly across the hall to the north is the music, again, supporting performing arts as its core. And then fitness center and PE and athletic support spaces, lockers, training rooms, team rooms, and storage to support PE and athletics. We're going to jump 2 levels to the upper level. And essentially, the 3rd level is essentially the learning core, which includes the upper level media commons area, or the research commons, and then learning neighborhoods. So it's that's essentially the only 3rd story of this diagram. The rest of these are just kind of what you're seeing is, as we sort of slice the plan, you're seeing high volume spaces, but this is not floor footprint, if you will. So the main 3rd floor is, again, back to the center. There's upper level commons, which is about media and research as its core support, as well as presentation and ideation. To the south, a learning neighborhood that looks very similar to the 2nd floor learning neighborhood. But we're starting to introduce these flex lab spaces, as well as a CNA lab that has now emerged during the programming and design process is something that we really wanted to be core to this south learning neighborhood, which wanted to be connected to science. So you have CNA, biophysics lab, 2 of them, and then chemistry lab as sort of the south learning neighborhood core learning. Again, north learning neighborhood is similar to the level below. And then bookending the north side of the common spaces is technology, IT support, a tech help desk, as well as student counseling. So again, a very quick tour, which is essentially the main components. Haven't really changed or moved throughout the building. We've just really started to develop all the ingredients that is needed to support those spaces. So back to similar to the elementary, we want to share some images that really give you a sense of what the school is going to look like in this landscape as a setting. So there's a main entry view similar to the elementary immediately from that drop-off lane that first, again, creating space and allowing landscape to move in, but also creating opportunities for small gathering outside of the school or immediately adjacent to the entry. Clear, defined main entry. So a lot of the landscape material we're designing and planning for in this area is really about native plant material. So it's we believe will thrive really well in this environment. Has a lot of great durability, and also paying attention to how it's adjacent to sidewalks, et cetera, as you think about how we treat our sidewalks and road conditions to deal with the winter conditions. We believe these will be plants that will be tolerable to that sort of environment. Along with the plant material, you're starting to see a first blush of how the building material starts to reflect the landscape. So this idea about wood coming out from the inside, creating this larger entry canopy to the secondary school. This idea about it's much larger, it's more grown up, it's more of a community entry to the heart of the secondary school. And we wanted to bring that warmth from the inside out. We also have ideas about in the core, the learning core, the center of the school, using what is called Core 10, a material that really represents, we feel, a direct connection to a lot of the colors that we see in your landscape. What we see at Oregon, along the shores of Oregon, or other areas where you get this real mineral red color emerge, and that's what that material represents, celebrating that entry. And then bookending everything is this idea about brick, again, brick drawing from colors and textures of the rock outcroppings of the landscape. Moving around to the west edge, so we're basically on the western side of the ring road that basically connects the school to the wetland to the west. Looking back towards the school, again, this idea about bringing the natural landscape to the inside as well as creating a lot of opportunity as you step down with the landscape to connect and create connections from inside to outside. So learning emerges from inside the building and not let the footprint of the building dictate where learning happens. You see as you step down the lower level commons, lower level learning neighborhoods, which I talked about being much more open, collaborative, connected spaces, have much more opening visually as well. So the idea that there's a lot more glass and connection to nature at that lower level. And you also see a lot more openness as the creative commons connects and sort of bookends this courtyard space here as well. The learning courtyard is again embraced by this idea that, you know, if the brick is the rock, the core 10 material is the mineral. And so as we sort of pull away and extract from the brick or extract from the rock, we see that rich red material that emerges in the courtyard space. That's where you're going to see that that red material. We'll transition to the interior, and I think it's important to reflect back on the fact that there's a lot of work that went in with an interior workshop that engaged teachers and staff and other staff, as well as students, and really thinking about what inspires them and what kind of environment would inspire them as a place for learning. And so this is basically a collection of work that you see here, and they created collages that supported their narrative for what they feel a learning environment should look like. And so these were common themes that emerged from that. This idea about creating spaces that are cozy, inviting, relaxing, and interplay of rock, wood, and metal materials became really important. Utilizing the structure and texture and patterns, something that we talked about in that very early design statement, about connecting to the local industry as well as the local landscape. And then, of course, inspiring creativity and collaboration in a timeless way. So those were common themes that emerged from that workshop that then informed and created, with our interiors group, created what we're calling chapters or themes that are deployed throughout the school, themes that represent and help inform the material palette of those locations within the school. So this idea about home, pride, water, forest, sky, earth, and industry, which come from those common themes and come from the words and the language that was used in that workshop by the people who attended them. And this is just a simple diagram of how we looked at deploying those 7 themes or chapters, if you will, into the building. So if this is a footprint of the building, you have that main commons area, the learning neighborhoods. You have the performing arts center and music, and then the athletic spaces to the east. So that's how we looked at deploying those themes throughout the school. And those themes were supported by an abundance of materials. And I should say last week, I'm not sure if it still exists in the media center at the Virginia Tech School, but Julie Spearing with DSGW laid out all the materials that are going to be applied to the interior and place them within these themes. As we presented, we were able to look at the actual materials as they related to how they're applied to certain parts of the building. So the main commons are looking directly, actually looking to the west, coming directly in from the main entry area. Again, similar to the elementary, this idea that the commons area is a connection to the landscape, both east and west. So as you come in from the east, you see all the way through to the west to that learning landscape beyond, and that's what that view shows right here. A 3-story common space you can see from we're on level 2 on the main commons, and if you look up, that's that research media core to the common space, which overlooks the lower level. That's where all the books and research and ideation takes place. This idea that this space should be filled with an abundance of daylight, it's one of those spaces where we often like to control the amount of glare that comes into a space, particularly learning spaces, but this is one where it's a little bit more welcoming. This idea that students come in from the eastern entry, that they're welcomed in with sunlight and daylight into the space becomes really important, and help create sort of this bright, welcoming, warm entry. Caps with this is this idea of just open, connected, and warm structure. So we've got glue lamp structure. So we have this entire lid to the common space, which is embraced with wood. So this idea of warm and cozy comes out through the structure that caps the common space. And then this idea about embracing that with ideas of modern and things that are timeless and not trendy. So directly down, so stepping down with the landscape was this idea of, we talked about the Creative Commons. Creative Commons, it does have a direct connection to that learning courtyard to the west. You can see up from the main level commons, there is a visibility and connection down to that. So as students are working on things that they're on the main level, and they can see down, and they can get excited about how the learning is happening outside the footprint of classrooms. I mentioned the main Creative Commons is supported by arts at its core. So enclosed art room spaces as well as open art room spaces, and this idea that this commons area is about letting that learning and developing and building and prototyping emerge out from those spaces, not just art, but the CTE to the north and south of this view. Again, bringing daylight into the space becomes really important and fully embraced. A view of the lower level learning neighborhood, and you can see just to point to, you can see directly out these windows is the learning commons, or the learning courtyard space. So at the lower level with those large glass windows that look, if you're in the north one, it looks to the southwest. If you're in the south one, it looks to the northeast. This idea about breaking down the barriers of the classroom and creating much more open, collaborative, project-based learning environments with flexible furniture, which is really important to allow those spaces to adapt and flex to the needs of the students and staff. This is the learning neighborhoods, the lower level, which back to that diagram was the theme was water. So you see a lot of cool blue tones, gray tones in this that really were drawn from that early inspiration of water as its foundational theme. Jumping way over to the other side of the building, the Athletic Commons, and this is again embracing that sense of pride. This is the area where we really want to reflect that great new logo, that fiercely united, the colors of the logo as well as the new brand emerge here, not just in graphics, but maybe even in floor material, in the furniture, but really is about celebrating, like the learning core. We're celebrating learning and exposing that to students. Why not do that here as well? Exposing PE and athletics as part of that idea about celebrating student achievement. So you see both to the right view, which is to the north, you see a very large glass window supported by this little chair, I guess a chair rail and countertop that opens up to the gym to the north. So the main competition gym becomes from the activities. Athletic Commons becomes very much in focus, as well as to the south or to the left of this view, the pool becomes close. Again, this idea about letting performance, athletics, PE really be celebrated in this space too, and it becomes a really engaging and lively space. So that student staff, as well as parents and other spectators, really have the ability to be sort of embraced by PE athletics in this athletic commons. Bringing skylight in and daylight in from the north was also, again, this idea throughout the school, connection to the outdoors was really important. And finally, just sort of ending with something a little bit more subtle and serene is the Performing Arts Center. I mentioned it does step down with the landscape, so you enter in on the main level. So if you come into the main entry, you just turn to the right, just directly behind admin is the Performing Arts Center. The main entry is at that level, and so you step down, again, step down with the building. This is one that the theme was Earth, and so this idea about really thinking about the perimeter walls being, again, like the shores of Oregon or other rock outcroppings, really about creating stratified earth and stratified layers, and layers of light that step down and lead you from the main entry level down and lead you to the performance which happens, which is really about what we're here to celebrate, the performance at the stage. All under this idea of the lighting here is the approach is about the starry sky field. So turning down the main lights and allowing the star field to emerge directly above you was really about this idea of like you're sitting in this this canyon or this mine pit, if you will, focused on the stage proper. And I've talked a lot on the secondary school again, and just for a little pause here if anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions from the board members? I just had, go ahead, Director Latiger.
I was just saying they look good.
I agree. I love how you've taken the elements that we love up here on the Iron Range and really put them into the design of both buildings. I think it's just going to be incredible. I'm really excited to see how it looks when it's complete.
Thanks.
And I'm not hearing that there are any questions for you. So I thank you both for your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the presentation from Kraus Anderson on best value procurement.
Alrighty, I will share my screen here. And before we get into the best value, we'll just go over a quick update on both the elementary and the high school. I'll talk the elementary, and Paul Knoll will jump in and talk the high school. So on the Evelyn Gilbert Elementary School construction, we have mobilized, and we have started construction preparations for blasting that should start this week. That's about all we got in construction right now. Bid package 2 is coming out on Monday, June 15th. Bids will be due on July 9th, and then we'll be asking for a special Joint Powers Board meeting on the 27th of July. And the reason for that is to
We won't have Joint Powers Board on the 27th of July. Excuse me.
Okay. We'll have to try to work through that.
No, what Matt's referring to is the Joint Powers Board won't exist anymore.
Okay. We'll have
a regular board.
Yes, yep. Sorry. New Rockridge School District Board. Yeah, that is correct. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Hi, everybody. This is Paul Knoll from Kraus Anderson. Just giving a quick update on the high school before Pete gets into his best value presentation. Bid package number 1, which is consisting majorly of the earthwork civil package, as well as the structural and foundation components of the building. Approximately 18 scopes of work in the around $30 million range is what we're anticipating. And we are going to receive those final documents from Cunningham Group and DSGW this Friday, which is June 5th. And those documents will be sent out publicly on Monday, June 8th. The contractors will have until July 2nd to turn in those bids, and so the public bid opening for the project will be on Thursday, July 2nd at 2:00 p.m. And then again, the Rockridge School Board will be looking to approve those. Then we'll send in our recommendation letter on 13 July. And then just a quick side note too, just a discussion topic that I wanted to bring up is that all of the structural steel tonnage material will all be U.S. steel. I know that's an important component politically and for the community, and makes all the sense in the world, especially considering where these projects are constructed. So just wanted to share that as well. And I will now turn it back over to Pete for some best value.
All right, thanks, Paul. Okay, as we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting here, we're going to go over our best value procurement method. And just to get started, to explain what best value is, it's a method to balance out the fairness of the open market low bid, which is the standard practice, and it mitigates the risk for larger order of magnitude and complex work scopes, such as your mechanical, electrical, mechanical controls, and larger site civil projects, such as the high school. Contractors are reviewed and scored based on a predetermined criteria, which is also listed in the Minnesota statute, 16C.28. And we apply that to the procurement method. So again, what is beneficial to the best value? Minimizes overall risk to the school district because we look at the different capabilities of the contractor, the quality of their work, the on-site safety, and their ability to maintain budget and schedule on the overall project. So how are we going to do the best value method? We have a 3-step process, starting with step number 1 with a pre-qualification application, which is scored by KA, Kraus Anderson, on weighted criteria, which we'll go over on the next slide. And the top 4 scoring contractors per work scope will advance to steps 2 and 3, which we'll go over here, which is bid price and an in-person interview. So after our pre-qualification application, and we have our 4 contractors, they submit a bid price, which is normally rated the highest, as it's more mathematical and objective. After we see the prices, we go to our post-bid in-person interview with the team from the contractors that are submitting a proposal. So we have them submit their committed team members, and that's who we interview. So again, there's no more than 4 contractor candidates per work scope, so mechanical, electrical, site civil. And the interviewing and scoring panel will be made up of multiple people, such as school district representative, normally from facilities, these kind of work scopes. So for instance, could be a Jeff Carey, a Bob Boss, or a Mike Hogue. Also 2 CMA representatives from Kraus Anderson, the respective Kraus Anderson PM, depending on the project. and the senior PM, which would be Mr. Patrick Gallagher. We'd also have 2 or 3 design representatives, depending on the work scope. So you'd have the architects, such as Cunningham, and their specific consultants, such as ARI or DSCW or Nelson Consulting Engineers. So all 3 of these steps will have assigned weighted points, and we communicate that in the advertisement for bid prior to the contractor's bidding, so they're all aware of the parameters and the qualifications that they need for this best value process. So as I mentioned before, there's weighted criteria, which some of it's stated in the Minnesota statute. So we consider a company's financial stability and ability to cash flow the scope that they're pursuing. So that helps us determine if they're financially stable enough to buy larger, more expensive pieces of equipment or materials for that specific scope. We also take into account their geographic location from the project, so how local they are to the Iron Range here. Their technical capabilities, especially with the complex mechanical and electrical systems going in these new high-tech schools. Their overall knowledge of the project and associated design and contract documents. And we also look at their approach to the project and how they're going to go about procuring their materials and how they're going to go about installing those. Also look at the qualifications of their personnel. As I mentioned, we have them list out their committed team that they're going to use on this specific project, and we hold them to those particular people. So we look at their qualifications by person on their team. We also look at their past track record, as I mentioned before, their safety record on past projects, quality of work, and their ability to maintain schedule and budget to minimize change orders, and then their overall customer satisfaction on past projects. Any questions so far?
One question that I have is where it says the weighted criteria says is partially stated in statute.
Yeah, that what they do is they give they word it as such on the statute that here's a partial list, but you're not limited to this. So they have a lot of this criteria in there. They don't have the geographic area, but we can add that. It is allowed to add that criteria. And we just figured that that would be important to you to have as many local contractors as possible. So that's an example of that.
Certainly, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Doesn't sound like it. Go ahead and keep going.
All right, we'll wrap it up with the last slide here and show you what we're proposing to use this best value method on which work scopes for which project. On the Evelyn Gilbert Elementary School, we're looking at the mechanical and electrical work scopes along with the mechanical controls, but that will be bid at a separate time during the high school bid package number 2, coming out at a later date.
And the reason for that is we want to make sure the controls for the elementary and the high school are the same provider. And we've had problems in the past where you have multiple control systems that won't talk to each other. We want to be able to control that from one central software platform for the facilities personnel. So we're going to just hold on the controls on elementary and bid that with the high school so we can eliminate that issue.
On the high school academy, with the larger site civil work with all the stadium and ball fields, we decided to have the best value for the site civil. Also the mechanical and electrical, and as Pat mentioned, the mechanical controls. We'll also be looking at the existing demolition projects with demolition contractors. And again, the mechanical, electrical, and mechanical controls for the Virginia Elementary. The one note on the Virginia Elementary, again, we want to make sure the compatibility with the high school and Evelyn Gilbert Elementary controls. So just a quick recap, even though this process does take a lot more time and effort from the whole team, the benefits definitely increase for our payoffs for the projects. And we've used this many times in the past in the public sector, especially on our K-12s, and it works really well. And we feel like it will reduce risk and definitely give a better quality final project for the school district. And that's all we had on the best value, if there's any questions.
Are there any questions from the board members? Doesn't sound like it. Noel, is this the point where we,
Nope, I'm sorry, then the last part we want to do is just that delegation of authority, Madam Chair,
yes.
if that's okay.
Yep. That's perfect. That's what I was going to get into.
Okay. Kind of a continuation of what Pete just reviewed with you, but the statute refers to this limitation, and your district complies with the state statute, and from what I found, you didn't have any other more limiting rules and policies in your current board situation, so we would go by the state statute. We can go up to $175,000 without where that star is down there. That shows that is the limit that you can go to without having to advertise and do a competitive bid process. So that is what we would recommend that you use as a threshold for change orders to be signed without board approval, but we'll have board reporting well, they have to report to the board and have the board approve it after the fact, and if there are issues with that, that's when they will be voiced. And we would recommend that this be delegated to the superintendent of the school district. It's pretty common to do this. The main reasons being things move pretty quick on a construction site, and if we catch something right after a joint board or a new district board meeting, a time frame of a month and a half or so after that would not be conducive to keeping the project moving. Like I said, there is still the reporting requirements that the superintendent would have to at the next meeting bring that forth, and if at any time the superintendent feels that it's a contentious issue, they could postpone it to a board meeting if time allows. Well, what we're looking for is that delegation of authority so the superintendent can sign up to $175,000 change order for items on the construction projects. Now, obviously, this will just be in place for the 1 month, so it pretty much means the elementary school. And we do have a couple of things that we will need to process as change orders just in the whole process of having 2 bid packages and bridging those gaps. So that is what we are looking for. The wording, I guess, we're looking for is delegation of authority of a limit of $175,000 or not to exceed $175,000 to the superintendent of the school district for construction change orders.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make that motion delegating Dr. Schmidt, superintendent, as having authority to approve change orders for construction projects up to a limit not to exceed $175,000?
So moved.
Motion by Director Anderson, support.
Support.
Support by Director Mannanen. Any additional discussion? Hearing no additional discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Director Sather?
Aye.
Director Mannanen?
Aye.
Director Schoberg?
Aye.
Director Lotiger,
Aye.
and Director Sundquist is an aye. Motion passes.
And I do too.
Oh, did I miss you, Maria? I'm
don't
sorry.
Don't worry.
My apologies. All right, motion passes. See, the next item on the agenda is the administrative restructuring plan update.
This one would be me giving the update to the joint board. Just to recap a little bit, we won't spend very much time on this, but the joint board has approved an administrative plan for when the districts come together. We have started implementing that, but I want to make a couple comments about that so everybody is aware of what's happening, and then ask you whether you want to do something. It's to review it, essentially. I'm hearing, occasionally I hear concerns that one district is hiring more of a certain people than another, or that one district, Virginia, more of the people being hired are coming from Virginia, fewer are coming from Evelyn Gilbert. Let me go straight to the main issue here. When we look at where the positions are, keep in mind that, and this is for all members of both boards, is that we are hiring people based upon competence and what they want to do. And when you look at it, Virginia has approximately twice as many students as Evelyn Gilbert. When I look down the list to see where these people are coming from when the districts come together, it is about what you would expect it to be. It's not, we are not hiring all Virginia people. It is really landing about where you would expect it to be. There were some positions that there were no applications from certain school districts. Well, we can't hire anybody from whether it's Virginia or Evelyn Gilbert if there are no applications from that school district. And so that comes into it and applies. But as near as I can tell, and let me be blunt here, we are hiring based upon who's applying, and we're hiring based upon who, when we interview them, who it looks like has the most skills. There's 3 positions I know: the business manager, superintendent, curriculum coordinator. On all those 3, we had no Evelyn Gilbert individuals express any interest in any one of those 3 positions. And so in those 3 positions, for example, Virginia people who currently are in similar roles are now moving into those roles. I guess I feel I need to say and let the joint board know there is no, we're not trying to rig the system. We're not trying to deliberately hire people from one district or the other. In the long run, it's all going to break even. It's all going to work out. But as near as I can tell, like for example, on the flip side of it, the construction liaison, buildings and grounds director is coming from Evelyn Gilbert. The custodian director is coming from Evelyn Gilbert. We're hiring a school business coordinator who is technically not either district, but she lives in Evelyn Gilbert. Her kids went to Evelyn Gilbert. Her husband teaches in Evelyn Gilbert. I don't know if you can get more Evelyn than Michelle Ufford. So I think it's coming about where you would expect it to be, because I know you're hearing things from the public, and I know some people are expressing concern about that. We are aware of that. We will continue moving forward and hiring people and looking at people who are interested in the job. And then when we get to the point of who's doing the job, my suggestion would be that wherever they're from, that we base our decisions based upon competence and who has the job skills to do the job. Speaking of which kind of goes into segue with, on the administrative plan, I know that the joint board passed this a number of months ago as we knew the situation to be at that time. So I have a question for the joint board. Do you feel comfortable with that plan? Do you want me to relook at that plan, see if some things need to be massaged or changed? Are you feeling good about it? Do you want me to take a look at it? What is the joint board thinking as far as the administrative plan that you saw several months ago?
Well, I know I wanted this to be put on the agenda, but it was mostly about the athletic director position, especially with recent events. I really feel we need 2 athletic directors, 2 full-time athletic directors. And I understand there might have been a meeting today with JoJo. Matt, is that right?
Yeah, we're the negotiating committee, and I was asked to sit in on that as the alternate in Director Lodiger's absence. We did talk to, amongst the other non-bargaining unit contracts that we discussed, we did speak quite a bit with Athletic Director JoJo Scott, and she indicated, gave us some thoughts on what she would like to see her contract. I'm still a little unclear whether that's up on July 31 or whether it's June 30th, but I agree wholeheartly that is, she is a person that, particularly in the transition from the Golden Bears and Blue Devils to the Wolverines, I agree wholeheartedly that it's important that we maintain, have 2 athletic directors, if you will. And that's what we're working towards.
I agree with that. While we're in transition, I agree.
I do too. I mean, it'll be one thing as the teams kind of merge together and we're all under one roof, but at this point, we've got 2 high schools, and I know from the Virginia perspective, Josh Lampa is at a ton of events. He's there at the school at a lot of evenings or at the hockey arena or wherever, and I think to spread that out between 2 districts would really wear one athletic director thin. And it sounded like what Director Lodiger was saying, that as we come together, maybe that will change, but at this point, I agree with that. And I can't remember on our administrative plan if we had just had 1 athletic director or 2, but I would like to have that still as 2.
Yep,
just
you
one.
had 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I think that we had an athletic director and we had an activities director. One that was going to take care of the plays and community education and things like that. But the other thing that I brought this up before, and I don't necessarily feel like we need an assistant principal in each building. I do think that is probably necessary in the high school, but I don't know if that is necessary in the elementary schools on Evelyn Gilbert South and Virginia North. I don't know if that's necessarily needed.
I agree somewhat, Brandy, and that was my stance from the get-go. That was a couple of positions that I didn't like when I first saw that plan. But once I got a couple of teachers got a hold of me, once word got going around that what my view was, and they definitely would like 1 additional one in our Roosevelt Elementary. The opinion is our current principal is handling way more discipline problems than he should be.
Noel, just in your initial question on kind of where things are at, I think it would be helpful to have it, to discuss and review it again. I think I don't know how much we spoke about, like the athletic director, I think is one example of how much we spoke about that ideally in 3 years, this is where our goal would be, but to stretch someone right now as we're consolidating July 1st, within how many different schools and across 3 different communities would be even more difficult to do that. So I'd be interested in kind of having that lens when we look at that administrative structure, because I think 3 years from now of where we're going to be sitting versus this next year might look different.
So So Director Sather, are you suggesting that we should put this on for an actual agenda item where we can get some slides up and take a look at the plan and make some changes to that?
I mean, we're 1 month from turning into a pumpkin as this board, and we'll be joined by 7 of our colleagues on July 1, and I just think that's a discussion that, you know, let's have that right away in July would be my suggestion.
Okay, so Noel, will you make a note to put that on for does that work?
Yes, I will do that, and I will give you some additional thoughts and maybe some scenarios to take a look at for the new board, because what happens on July 1st is that the joint board, the way the whole thing was legally set up, just so everyone knows, the joint board dissolves. It goes away. You don't need to do anything. It just goes away. And then the new board, all 13 members, they're the ones who take charge and are now the new board, and we'll have to figure out who are the officers and all that stuff when we meet in July. So I will, yes, I will do that.
Okay, thank you. And so no action that needed to be taken on that. The next agenda item is I would entertain a motion to go into a closed session to engage in discussions with the joint board's legal counsel related to litigation in the case of ERATS versus ISD 706, court file 69BI-CV-20-20-236.
I will make that motion, Director Lotiger.
Thank you.
Support Director Anderson.
I will take a roll call vote. Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Manman?
Aye.
Director Schoberg?
Aye.
Director Sather?
Aye.
And Director Lotiger?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So the motion passes. What I would suggest is that we log off on this. If anyone needs, any of our board members need the link, let me know and I can forward that to you. But why don't we reconvene in about 5 minutes in the closed session? And then just so the public is aware, we'll leave this open and we will reconvene after to close out this board meeting. So I will see you board members in the closed session, and it's like 7:26. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.